Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. This is a coffee talk. It's dedicated to Rabbi Reuven and Nalini and the entire beautiful Ibragimov family on the engagement of Yaakov to Rita Wahba. Mazal Tov, wishing everyone blessings of health and happiness with love by Gila and Keith Saxe and family. Very special family. I love the Saxe family very, very deeply. I'm wishing them a bracha of happiness and simcha, a bracha that they get to see all their kids married with the right girl at the right time. And most importantly, we want to wish Gila a happy, happy birthday. It should be a year filled with simcha and bracha and nachat in everything that you do. All right. We are continuing in our series of Middot, and we are trying to get some more clarity about what it means to be someone who is a bit more refined. There's a great quote in Pirkei Avot: "If I am only for myself, what am I? There is this idea that, like, ultimately, if I'm only thinking about my own personal wants and needs, then what have I reduced myself to? In Judaism, we expect that a person has this ability of moving beyond the self to the point where, for example, in the Torah, it tells us that when listing the different types of animals that are kosher, it tells us about the stork. The Torah says the chasidah, which is the stork, is not kosher. Now, Rashi asks, why is it called the chasidah? It's called the chasidah because it only does chesed with its own kind. So what's wrong with doing chesed with your own kind like that? Why is that a bad thing? And the reason why that's a bad thing is because chesed is meant to be much more broad. It's meant to be much more pervasive. It's meant to be something that's much more, inclusive. It's not about the small, idea of giving kindness to a very small, narrow group. Don't use those. Robin, don't use that sheet. Use those sheets. The one on the left. I pulled it out. Those are two separate sheets that kind of got correlated together. Mechila. Yeah, this is kindness. But yeah, there's 3 pages. That's it. That's it. You got it. That's right. Okay. So we have a pasuk in Micha. And let me just finish the idea. So the chasidah is the stork. It only does chesed with its own kind, and that's why we can't eat it. We don't eat the stork because there's a perversion in the way it does chesed. Chesed to only one group of people is not considered kindness. That's not kindness. So the pasuk in Micha says, "What does your God ask of you? Except that you do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God." This is what God asks of us. If you want to know what the mission statement is of a Jew, it is to do justice, to do loving kindness, and walk humbly with God. And we spoke about humility. Humility, the idea of knowing when to be big and when to be small. What is the difference between chesed and tzedakah? We've mentioned this idea before, but let's just talk about the difference. The word tzedakah comes to the word tzedek. Tzedek means justice. And therefore, when I am doing the mitzvah of tzedakah, I'm doing exactly what I need to do. What is the mitzvah of giving tzedakah? It's the mitzvah of giving a person something. 5 cents, 10 cents, $1 today. 5 cents is not really worth much anymore. How are you? Welcome back. Giving them food if they need food or whatever it is. Whatever that person needs. Sometimes a person just needs a smile. They need you to just be there to hear, to listen, to sit down and, carry some of the burden, share some of the burden with them. But Micha tells us that this is what God wants. Our mission statement as Jews are to be individuals that do justice. Justice is tzedakah. Tzedakah is my obligation, my responsibility, and it's written out. A minimal, I have to give at least 2 people a meal a year to fulfill my obligation of tzedakah. That's between $20 to $30. That's all I need to do. If you want to know what your legal obligation of tzedakah is, it's $20 to $30 a year. That's it. Oh, well, what about all that other stuff you do? Ma'aser. Ma'aser is different. Ma'aser kesafim is a little bit different. That's 10% of your earnings for charity, right? That's something completely different. So on the one hand, you have the obligation, minimum obligation, and then you have other obligations as well. But all those things are very much narrow, 10% of my earnings. So I made $100,000, after everything, I'm giving my $10,000 a year to charity. And I could use that charity for the poor people and organizations and so on and so forth. But that, my friends, is not chesed. Chesed is not tzedakah. Tzedakah is my justice, my responsibility to giving, and I don't have to give any more than that. Once I fulfilled my obligation, I am done. What does the word chesed mean? Chesed means going above and beyond my responsibility. Chesed means breaking out of the confines of tzedek, of justice. Justice just means I'm doing exactly what I'm responsible to do. I need to take care of you. I've taken care of you. Shalom Yisrael. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Have a great day. Right? But chesed is going beyond. So chesed is, you see the guy in the street and you give him $1. That's tzedakah. Chesed would be asking him if you can help him get a job. Chesed would be taking him and getting him, new clothing and making sure he's got, warm clothing and so on and so forth. You don't need to do that. That's not your obligation as far as tzedakah is concerned. But chesed means going outside of the boundaries, beyond. There are no boundaries, endless. There is no limit to how much you can give. Tzedakah is a limit. According to Jewish law, I'm not supposed to give more than 20% of my money to charity. I have to get special permission to give more than that. If I'm making, $1 billion and I want to give more than my allotted $100 million charity, 10%, 20%, $200 million, I want to get the 300 million. I have to ask a special sheila to a posek that gives me permission to give more. I'm not supposed to give more than 20% of my money to charity. Limitations to how much tzedakah you give. But chesed, endless, limitless, it's infinite. Okay, this would explain why. Look at source number 2. The Mishnah in Perkei Avot says, Ha'olam omed al shlosh devarim. The world stands on 3 things. On what? On Torah, Avodah, and Gemilat Chasidim. Right? On these 3 pillars. Caroline, there's your sheet is all sheet number 1, and your sheet is all sheet number 2. So you gotta pull out a sheet from the staple and combine them. And that's how you'll get a packet. All right, Mechila, I did a bad job printing today. Okay. So he said, Perkei Avot says, the world stands on 3 things, on Torah, Avodah, and Gemilat Chasadim. Okay, so what's Torah? We know that. Torah is the system of Jewish development and growth. Someone asks you, what is Torah? Torah is the instruction manual for us to develop ourselves into greater human beings. That's what Torah is. You want to know what the Torah is? It is the manual for human perfection. Okay, what is Avodah? Avodah today is not doing the service in the temple. We don't have a service in the temple. Instead, we have something called tefillah. Avodah is avodat shebelev. Avodah is the work of the heart. The most difficult thing in the world is to turn a heart of stone into a heart of flesh and blood. Right? To turn a heart of flesh and blood is to turn a heart into one that is aware of the needs, the wants of the people around them. A heart of stone is a chasidah, is the stork who only thinks of his own wants and needs, only thinks of his own kind. A heart of flesh and blood is a heart of flesh and blood that recognizes the needs of the people around them. What is chesed? This idea of caring for the people around us. Okay, look at the next. We say the world, olam chesed yibaneh. God creates the world, that's number 3, as an act of kindness. Creation itself expresses kindness. Can anyone tell me how? How does creation express kindness? Think about it for a minute. How does creation, the world that we're in right now, how does that express God's kindness?
Because He made it for us.
Okay, it's true. Good answer. He made it for us. What else you want to add?
He keeps it going.
He sustains it. Excellent. And we're going to see that inside. Look, let's just do it next. Let's go to the next. Nefesh Chaim. Right? Number 4. Gila is already in tuned with the big Kabbalists. She says as follows. Right? As the notables of the Great Assembly, Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, canonized in the blessing of Yotzer HaOr, he forms light, right? He constantly renews the acts of creation. The specific term used is constantly, right? Ta'amid, to denote that every instant and every moment, that this is proof that he's explained that what is written in Tehillim, that to one who actualizes the great luminaries, right? Yotzer HaMeorot. It wasn't written as actualized, but rather actualizes, meaning God recreates and animates every single moment of life. Yotzer Or means that He's creating continuously at this moment right now. The reason why there is Or, there is light, is because God is bringing down the light into the world right now. And that's not, oh, I did it and I walked away. That's him being conscientiously aware of right now. You, my friends, exist because God is willing you into existence. He's infinitely in love with you in ways you can't begin to understand. Does God need anything? The answer is no. Why? Because he is infinite. He has no beginning, no end. He is limitless. He does not need anything. Well, why would he create me and you? Does he need your brachot? The answer is no. He does not need you to say a bracha. He does not need you to say amen. You need it. The brachot are there for you. They're there for you to be able to walk away with and have a relationship with an infinite being. So you can grow into something much more profound. So you could evolve into something that's greater. So one of the things that we do as Jews is recognize that, if God created the world and he used midat hachesed, he used this power of kindness, of infinite giving, then wouldn't it make sense for me to work on becoming someone who's an infinite giver as well? How do I become more godly? I become more godly by becoming someone who's being mindful of giving to the people around me. How am I giving back? How am I providing? How am I caring for? Torah Menachem says as follows: in his goodness, he renews the work of creation every day. Since the creation is brought about a yesh me'ayin, right? Something from nothing. Existence comes to being from an absolute nothingness. It must continually be renewed, as explained in the great length in the Tanya and the Shar HaYichud, right? The Amunah. Since the fundamental state of created existence is non-being, the nature of the universe is non-existence, right? Were it not have been created, it would have never been existed. Its existence runs contrary to its natural state. Hence, the creative force that brings existence into being must be present within the creation at all times to constantly renew it. The continual renewal is diametrically opposed to the natural state of non-being. What then causes this renewal? God's essential and boundless goodness. That is the only thing that allows the world to exist. So let's explain that. There is a law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics is entropy. Okay, the law of thermodynamics states that the universe is in a state of chaos. That means if you leave things in a natural order, things are going to degrade over time. They're not going to get better over time. So the dugma, if I clean up this room and I walk out and I come back a year later, it will be dirty. Right? The nature of the universe is that things are degrading over time. They are not getting better. Things are disintegrating. They're getting old. They're becoming decrepit. They're becoming rusty. They become frail. They fizzle away. So the nature of the universe is that there's something called the law of thermodynamics. We're losing energy every minute, and we're expressing energy, right? Things are becoming smaller and weaker. Then how do we have a state of creativeness and continuousness? Where does that come from? Where does order and structure come from in a world of chaos? Makes no sense. They're opposing ideas. So the Torah Menachem says that, because God creates a reality in where this space of tohu v'vohu, right? Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'haaretz, v'haaretz hayta tohu v'vohu. The world was nothing but null and void. The world the universe was in a state of chaos. God brings order by saying the word Bereshit. In the beginning. Now there's something called time. There's something called space. He created the fabric of reality. The nature is chaos, and God creates something called order in it. But that isn't a one-time deal. This is an eternal, unnatural reoccurrence where God has to continuously work towards renewing, reanimating, re-energizing creation itself. Okay? So, Torah Shmuel says as follows: although the renewal is continuous at every moment, we still mention it as taking place every day because it is in the morning, with the shining of the sun, that we awaken from our sleep, that we become consciously aware of this process of renewal. It's happening every single second. I had a rabbi who once told me, because I said to him, Rabbi, it's so easy. Look at the stories of the Torah. These people saw miracles. Like Abraham was thrown into a fiery furnace and he walked out unscathed. Like if I am to me, I'd be a believer too. Right? He's like, all these people, they saw the miracles in Mitzrayim and in Yam Suf. Who would have any doubt? Like it would be so clear. He's like, that's not how it works. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, for Abraham, he first had to get himself into a conscious state where he recognized that every moment was a miracle. So I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you want to see a miracle? I'm like, yeah. Who doesn't want to see a miracle? He's like, watch this. And he lifts up his arm and he goes like this. That's a miracle. I said, no, it's not. That's just you putting down your arm. He's like, but I shouldn't have the ability of doing that. Like, why am I not a rock? Why am I not like an inanimate object? Where does this animation power come from? There are so many things in the universe that don't have anything, but there's something in me that makes me different. Where does that fundamental change come from? So he says that Avraham Avinu and the Avot get themselves to a place where they recognize that every single molecule in their body is a nes. That every atom around them should not be there. It should be chaos. Everything should be in flux, moving. Right? Even though, by the way, it is. Do you know that when you walk into a room, the walls bend towards you ever so slightly? It's measurable because you shift gravity when you walk into a room. Do you know that? What's that? Yeah, you're changing the space around. You walk into a room and you are literally, things are contracting around you. It's powerful. We don't see it. What?
Say hello.
Yeah. Say what?
I want to say hello to...
1 second, not right now. We're going to come back. We'll do that later. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh bidbaro. All right. So God creates this conscious. So the Avot got themselves to this consciously aware. They worked in this place where now that they were able to have this awareness, is there a difference between you being saved from a fiery furnace and you being able to use words to speak? For Abraham, there was no difference. That was his point. There's no difference for him. So there was no big miracle for Abraham. Because I should not be able to have the ability of having this conversation with you. He lived in that kind of awareness. The awareness that every single moment that God is consciously aware of you, of me, is a miracle. That is not the way the world is meant to be. The world is meant to be in a state of chaos. And therefore, this midah that allows him, God, to interact by creating a reality that continuously needs his input, his energy to revitalize, is being fueled by chesed. By the way, this is what the Midrash means, that when God wanted to create the world, he first created it with din, with judgment, and then destroyed the world. He couldn't do it. The world cannot exist using the midah of justice. That's the ideal world that God wanted to create. A world where you did something wrong, boom, you were zapped. God saw that the world could not exist in that reality. And this is an important lesson for parents, by the way. If you're a parent of a child, do not burden your kids by creating a system of just deen. The only way we can inspire our children is through chesed. Chesed means infinite loving, infinite giving, infinite, everything. The Gemara in Shabbat says, look at number 7, the way of those who do chesed is to run after the poor. To run after the poor. The poor people. Yeah, the poor, right? If what we've been speaking about over the last few weeks in this class is that everyone here believes that they're chesed oriented, right? No one thinks they don't do chesed. Everyone does chesed here. But to be someone who is living a life of chesed means that you're asking yourself, how am I inserting more chesed awareness into my life? God is consciously aware of every moment of you. That's chesed. What are we doing to be consciously aware of bringing more chesed into our world? What are we doing? It's worth stating that the Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us that the students of Rabbi Eliezer asked, Rebbe, what can someone do to protect them from the times of Mashiach, from the wars of Gog and Magog, this end of time, this surreal moment in time where everything seems like it's about to be lost. So Rabbi Eliezer said, Ashrei ha'ish asher yesham, ve'ashrei ha'ish asher lo yesham. Praiseworthy are those people that are going to be there, but also, it's going to be that bad. So they said, well, what do we do? What can someone do? He said, there's only two things you can do to prepare yourself and protect yourself from the Yemot HaMashiach. And what are they? Number one, he said, Gemilat Chasadim. Be Gomel Chasadim. The word Gomel means to run after, to pursue Chesed. And then he said Talmud Torah. Right? Two things. Learning Torah, as they say. This is the Torah class. You're here for that. So that's good. Check. Right? If you want to be bulletproof, you got to ask yourselves, what am I doing to bring more chesed into my life right now? Right? We had actually on the Monday nights, we have a program here, Monday nights for young professionals. And there was a girl from the class who ended up going to Ukraine to volunteer. She just got up and she left. She's there. She's helping people on the borders get clothing and feeding them. She felt like she needed to do something. She couldn't be a bystander. She was just driven by it. She's a chesed-oriented person. Right? Beautiful. Right? And we see it's happening. There's something like 8 or 9 million people that are displaced right now in the world. And then the next 3 or 4 months, countries like there's some places in Africa that are going to go through very, very horrific hunger, starvation, famine again in the world. Right? What are we doing to prepare for that? Are we prepared to give back? There's something like 9,000 refugees in Israel alone in the last 50 days. 9,000. That's a lot for a small country to absorb, right? 9,000 refugees in Israel alone. There are 1 million Russian Jews in the Soviet Union. There are 200,000 Jews in the Ukraine currently. These are huge numbers. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I started by saying how the Hasidah, the stork, is the one that only does chesed with its own kind, and that's a bad thing. And that we have to become individuals that are able to do chesed with all kinds of people. We don't eat the stork, it's treif, it's not kosher because it only does chesed with its own kind. And therefore we need to become people that do chesed with all kinds of people. What are we doing to do chesed to the world? Okay, Rabbi, it's too big, I'm not like a global thinker, it's too much for me. Well, what about the people, there's people here in the New York area that need help. How are we bringing this awareness into our lives? Is what I'm asking us. Everyone here believes that they are kind people, and I believe that you are. But to live with a chesed consciousness means you have something called hakara, an awareness of chesed. An awareness of chesed means that you are proactively working on bringing chesed into the world. This, my friends, is how you become godly. This is how you become a partner with the Be'oreh Olam, with the creator of the universe. You become a partner by asking yourself this very important question. Look at number 8, Pirkei Avot Rab Natan. He says as follows, he says, as Hillel put it, if I am only for myself, what am I? The words of tradition unremittingly remind us that life is not to be lived every one for himself or herself, to sustain one another. We must strive to love the very act of caring for another. On that high level of perfected chesed, we become pious people. Appropriately in Hebrew, the pious person is called the Chassid, right? So he succeeded in his way, and your world totally transformed within and without. Now, it's interesting, this is kind of like a weird idea, but think about it. There's two kinds of people, the Chassid and the Tzaddik. Right? The righteous person and the pious person, the chassid. Now, what's the difference? Now, this idea is interesting because we don't use these words properly anymore. When we think of a chassid today, what are we thinking of? A Hasidic sect. You're thinking of, peyot and a furry hat and a long coat and white socks and weird shoes and whatever, different kinds of shoes and so on and so forth, right? So you have a chassid, and look, that's chesed. Right? And the answer is no. That's not what chesed means. Chesed means someone who's going above and beyond. Chassidut started for Jews who want to do more. They want to break out of the confines of halacha, break out of the confines of whatever our tradition is. They want to do more for God. And they took on more restrictions. Whereas the tzaddik was an individual who does exactly what he is supposed to do. Right? The tzaddik is someone who follows the letter of the law. He's not the chassid. The chassid is going above and beyond the letter of the law. The interesting thing is that today, the chassid is really doing exactly what he's told. the letter of the law. The Hasidim of today are really using this power of tzedek, right? Of justice to relate to the Borei Olam. That what they started in their movement 250 years ago, right, in Russia, was about becoming a chassid, going above and beyond. And they've lost that when they created their chassidut. Isn't that interesting? It's like a weird kind of parallel. And today,
I thought it was an anti-intellectual movement, that it was more about exuberance and feeling and...
no, it was about involving those things in it as well. But those, but
anti the Middot who were...
correct. It's part of it, but a greater part of it was this idea of feeling this need to do more, going above and beyond. And that means including the lev, it means including all kinds of other things, song and dance, because European Jews were miserable. You know, it was very hard. It was very hard for them over there. But so this was a way of being b'taken that, but it became limiting once you created the chassidut itself. You've limited yourself to a particular kind of dress and kind of thinking. That's not what chassidut was supposed to be. It was supposed to be about expanding yourself to include other things. But the chassidut itself kind of created a limitation in it at the same time. It's like a weird thing.
But they do also about everything.
And the challenge with the chassidut is that, and this is not a question, this is not a class, we could do a whole other thing on chassidut if you want to have like lots of material on it, but the whole Middot versus the chassidim is fascinating. And especially looking at like the Vilna Gaon versus the Baal Tanya is amazing, crazy historical stuff. But that's not for today. But yeah.
But the idea of it was that it was supposed to be, I think this is what I read, that it was supposed to be more inclusive because the Middot was, you know,
Hyper intellectuals.
Talmud scholar,
Yes,
and
correct.
it was limited to the people who could do it.
Correct. It was, but it's true, but you have to think of it as a grassroots movement, right? If I was starting a program today to revitalize Judaism, and I want to get you into my program, so I'm going to create a class for you. I'm going to create I'll create programs, Shabbatons. Now, it's so easy for everything that I create to become your Judaism, right? And that's a problem. Because it becomes something that's not Jewish anymore, it becomes the Rabbi Reuven and Ibragimov Jewish experience.
It's unbalanced.
Do you know what I'm saying? The beautiful thing about Judaism is that Judaism it takes on this idea of darchei noam. Its ways need to be pleasant. And if you're experiencing a Judaism that is unpleasant, there's something wrong with it. Okay? And now, are there some people that need to live a more rigorously Jewish life? The answer is yes. They need it. And some people are not ready for it. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with recognizing that there is a process for growth. And that's why it's called halacha. It comes from the word halicha, a pathway. The word for law in Judaism is not tzedek, justice, do this. It's halacha, halicha, a pathway. What's a pathway? It's your path and my path. Now, is there a path for everybody? The answer is yes. Is there like a similar route that we're all trying to get a similar destination? Yeah. We all want to get to the same place. How we get there, that's all about your unique journey. We're all on a different journey. And that's okay. But the way in which we become these God-conscious beings is by asking ourselves, how do we become much more than ourselves? How do we stop thinking about our own wants and needs? And how do we become individuals that are thinking more broadly about the wants, the needs of the people around us? That is what having chesed, kindness, is really about. Real kindness is not someone who's just doing it, oh, there's a program in December where we give coats to the poor, and we're going to get together as a community, and which is a beautiful thing to do. That's definitely part of it. But a real practitioner of chesed is someone who's proactively asking themselves, what can I do today to bring more chesed into the world? What am I doing today that's different? What opportunity am I finding? It doesn't have to be something big. I'm not saving the whales today. I'm not going out to Ukraine and fighting a war. It doesn't have to be, I'm just, but it's got to be something, something that you're doing for yourself. So how does chesed humble us? Right? You see, when we're only thinking about ourselves, when we're only thinking about our own desires and needs, it's very easy to start to inflate your ego. It's about me. And Judaism says it very clearly. You got to take care of yourself. I'm going to speak about this tomorrow. This machloket between in the Gemara about if you have two people who are walking in a desert and you only have enough water to sustain one person, what do? Right? So the Gemara first says you got to split it, but you only have enough to save one person's life. You don't have enough water to get out of the desert. If you split it, both of you are going to die. The Gemara originally says you got to split it, but then you know who changed the halakha? Rabbi Akiva. Akiva says no, chayecha kodem. Your life comes first. Well, I don't understand. It's so ironic because Rabbi Akiva also told us that v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, that the whole purpose of the Torah is to love your neighbor, right? So why is he the guy that's also saying no, chayecha kodem, when he's the same guy that says no, you got to love your friend like as much as you love yourself? And the idea is very simple. You have to live in a world where you recognize your greatness, but your greatness is not just to sustain yourself. Your greatness is there to help sustain the people around you. It goes first you and then everyone else around you. It's not just you for you. It's you for service. You for the needs of others, right? And the example I often give, and I do this with a lot of my couples who are just getting married or about to get married. So I tell them, if you walk into a room, and these are not non-married people, and you see your spouse and your child crying, who do you take care of first? So the natural response is you got to take care of the child. The child is unable to care for himself and take care of the kid first. And I say, no, that's not true. You got to care for your spouse first. I say, why? Because your spouse is an extension of you. And if your spouse is broken and crying, it probably explains why the child is crying. The way we see the world needs upgrading. We see this, by the way, expressed so beautifully on an airplane, right? They say when the oxygen masks come down, make sure to fit your masks on first, not to the people around you. Because if you're knocked out, you can't care for the other person. So our spouses are an extension of ourselves in this way, and therefore you see the two of them upset, unhappy. Your job is to care for the spouse before the child. Okay, so this is your homework. Your homework for this week is to take on another Kabbalah, right? What's a Kabbalah? A Kabbalah is an exercise where one takes on to give a workout to a certain midah. Okay, last time we spoke about this idea of doing 3 generous acts a day. And here, I'm going to ask you to develop your own Kabbalah to cultivate chesed. Okay, this is an idea that is inspired from this idea of halachta b'derech Hashem. Rav Chama, the son of Rav Chanina, also said, what is the meaning of the text? You shall walk after your Lord, your God. Is it possible for a human being to walk after the divine presence? For has it not been said, for the Lord your God is a devouring fire? Rather, the meaning is to walk after the attributes of God. No one could walk in God's path because God is so powerfully profound, but we want to copy his attributes. As he clothes the naked, for it is written, and the Lord God made for Adam and his wife coats of skin and clothe them, so shall you also clothe the naked. God visits the sick, for it is written, and the Lord appeared unto him by the oaks of Mamre, so should you visit the sick. God comforts mourners, for it is written, and it came to pass after the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac his son, so should you also comfort the mourners. God buries the dead, for it is written, and he buried him in the valley, so should you also bury the dead. Okay? This is a template for doing chesed. And also for this week's assignment. Start by, from the categories mentioned in the section of the Talmud just quoted. Clothing the naked, visiting the sick, comforting the mourner, burying the dead, which is, I'm not sure if any of you have ever done a tahara, if you've ever volunteered to prepare a body for burial. You can totally call your local burial society and say you want to come and learn it. I promise you it's an experience that's going to change your life.
You have to be very observant, right? You have to be
Telling you, just go and do it. Don't worry about your observance. Okay, do the chesed. This is a true story. Many years ago, this happened in 2003, when I was just leaving Israel, finishing my rabbinical degree and so on, so coming back to America and looking at different posts for a rabbinical position. So there was a position out in San Antonio, Texas, that was courting me very hard to come down there, and they were offering me everything. I mean, house, car, swimming pool, I mean, like insurance, courtside tickets at the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, like everything. They were doing everything they can to get me to come down there. So my first day there, speaking to the community, meeting the people, I get a call from the rabbi, and he's like, listen, I'm so sorry, I can't make it tonight to this tahara. Someone in the community died. Do you mind preparing the body? I'm like, are you serious? I don't think I was ever trained to do this. He's like, don't worry about it. Someone will be there to walk you through it. I would have never done it unless I was forced to do it. And it was an older man. He was Ashkenazi. He had these beautiful, piercing blue eyes. And I remember them because they kept popping open. In middle of this, they kept popping open. So if you don't, yeah, it's terrifying. It's a normal reflex for when the head is lying down. The mouth opens and the eyes keep the eyelids open. So
Comforting.
what's that?
This is very comforting.
Oh, it's supposed to be comforting, but you're supposed to put something over their eyes and supposed to put like a handkerchief around their head and neck and their chin to keep their mouth shut. Otherwise, it keeps dry. Anyway, so the idea is that I spent 2 hours helping clean this body for burial. And it was one of the most difficult things I ever did. What's that? I've never done it again, but it's still probably one of the most meaningful things I ever did, ever. And the way in which they care for these bodies and the way they treat them and the way they prepare everything, it's so much respect, so much beauty. Yeah.
Did you feel the a person hovering around? Was there any essence?
It's definitely a weird, it's definitely a little spooky, no question about it. And that's the right word. It's spooky. There's something there. You definitely feel like there's something there. Yeah, that's why I call it spooky. Yeah.
It can't get any spookier.
Yeah, does not get any spookier, no, that's for sure. But it's also so beautiful, and I walk around with so much confidence and so much that I do because I had that experience. Because I know that I spent one moment of time doing something called Chesed Shel Emet. What's Chesed Shel Emet? Chesed Shel Emet is doing a kindness that you cannot be repaid for. That is a real Chesed Shel Emet. Okay.
Do you have to,
Yeah.
and you're too high, you have to go and you have to cleanse?
Well, it doesn't really, there's something called Tumat Met. This is the impurity of the dead, and all of us are in that state, and you can't get out of it until we rebuild the temple and have the Para Aduma. There's no way for anyone to get out of that state.
If you were a Kohen, you wouldn't be allowed to.
Correct. Kohanim are, even today, we believe all the Kohanim are in the same status of being Tumat Met because the whole world is this crazy place right now. But still, we can't get out of that state. Everyone's in that state. You walk into a hospital, someone died, you're in that state. There's no, yeah.
Why do we have to die?
Why do we have to die? That is an excellent question. That's a great question. And I want you to know, my son and I have been, this is a complete tangent. Let me 1 second. I'm going to answer your question because it's so cool. I want to finish this and I want to get back to that. And then I will do a series on death because I think it's important. Okay, most important, day by day, track your experience with an exercise. Did you accomplish your task every day? What happened when you tried to do chesed? What held you back? Use your writing record to puzzle through the experiences. Not only will your experiences become more clear, but you will find that you have sharpened the beam of awareness that you bring into your daily life. And don't forget your morning affirmation, key phrase, the word stands on kindness. Right? The world stands on kindness. I'm just going to end this recording. Thank you so much for listening. And I'm going to answer your question, Marie. If you want to hear my answer, you're going to have to come back for the series that I do on death and living. Have a great day.